Hey, just wanted to signal boost and share a few words of support for the new Minnesota artists for a ceasefire letter that's going around. It's up to, I think, over 2,000 signatures. If you haven't seen it yet, I'll share a link with this post. And as much as I have been saying over the past month, it's generally not a good move to look to artists and influencers and random talking heads for our news and analysis. I think the flip side to that is, you don't have to be an expert to know that what is happening right now is wrong. And so I thought I would share a few quick thoughts about why I signed the letter personally. Basically, I think it's pretty clear that a ceasefire is the bare minimum necessary at this point to both stop the killing of civilians and work meaningfully toward a lasting peace. We all know, a lasting peace is easier said than done. I think a key point here is, like I said, you do not need to be an expert or an historian or a scholar to see children dying and know that it's wrong. You do not have to have a magical key to ending the conflict to know that what is happening right now, funded by U.S. tax dollars, is wrong. And if you're new to this issue, I think a useful point is that it isn't just activist groups and like angry college students speaking out about this. It's Doctors Without Borders, Human Rights Watch, Oxfam, UNICEF, Amnesty International, on and on. It is very much the international human rights consensus that the Hamas attacks on October 7th were horrific, and the ongoing response by the Israeli government is horrific. Some 1,200 killed in the initial attacks, some 12,000 killed in the response, including over 4,000 children. Again, a ceasefire is just the logical, urgent, obvious thing to call for at this point. I have to add just really briefly, like I was a kid, I was 18 years old, just getting into the world of activism for the first time when 9/11 happened. And I very distinctly remember that bull rush into an unjust, illegal war that destroyed millions of lives. And I remember elected leaders lying and the media amplifying those lies. And, I also remember, though, the power of solidarity in that moment. In particular, I was lucky enough to have people in my community who I looked up to, who taught me about activism, who were Palestinian and who were Jewish Americans and who were people from all different walks of life kind of working together to stop that war. And of course, if you know your history, like that war wasn't stopped when it needed to be. But I think that doesn't mean that the work didn't matter. I think it means that work planted seeds, some of which are sprouting now. People now, I think, are less likely to believe those kinds of lies, whether they are coming from Netanyahu or Trump or Biden or anybody. And that's just, one more reason why it is so important to speak out right now. It's very easy to be cynical, to say like, oh, me contacting my reps or sharing social media posts or going to a protest or march, or even this Minnesota artist for a ceasefire letter, right? None of those are going to change Netanyahu's mind or policies. But, whether or not that's true, and I don't think it's a given that it is, at least in terms of impacting U.S. support for what Israel is doing, regardless of all that, the speaking out in this moment plants seeds for future long-term change. And those seeds that really, really do need to be planted right now. Which brings us back to this Minnesota artist for a ceasefire letter. Like, what might it actually do? I'm always drawn toward political actions that are concrete and specific, right? Like it's easy and it's good, but it's easy to just post like Free Palestine on Instagram. But I think it's important to look for and seek out specific calls to action from organizations who are actually doing the work on the ground, right? And to lift up what the people most affected by the issue are actually asking for. And in this case, Palestinians and organizations connected to Palestinians are asking those of us here in the US, in the belly of the beast, to like spread the word, to show up to marches and rallies and events, and to contact our elected leaders constantly, consistently, every day to demand a ceasefire. To let them know that their action or inaction on this issue is going to affect how we vote. This petition, this letter, I think, can be a really useful tool for that point when you are calling Senator Klobuchar or Senator Smith, to demand a ceasefire. Like, I think this letter shows how fired up people are about this issue. Artists are embedded in our communities and our neighborhoods, and we tend to be good at telling stories and shifting narratives and using our networks and platforms to mobilize people. Now at least to the last point that I'll share here, why artists. I think the stereotype is that the power of art in times of crisis is, you write a song about what's happening or a poem and that like changes people's minds. And of course, there is some truth in that, right? Like our voices are powerful, but I think something really important that doesn't get talked about as much is the idea that like artists are powerful not just because of our art, but because of our ability to reach people. And of course, that could be a deep poetic thing about shaping narratives, but I mean reach people like literally. Like I have 15,000 Instagram followers. We all have some kind of platform or email list or social media following or stage through which we can transmit information and share calls to action. This letter I think is a great example of that. If you are, not even someone like me who like writes about this stuff all the time, but like if you're a DJ who like plays party music for people to dance to and you don't think of yourself as an activist, you can still sign on to this and share it with your community and encourage them to get involved. And like that is power, no matter what the art itself is saying. Like using our networks and our platforms is really important. And so again, I know this is a longer video. I will share the link to the letter. That letter, aside from just a huge list of names, also has one, a form where if you haven't signed it yet and you're a Minnesota artist, you can sign it. And two, an action toolkit with some resources related to how to get in touch with your reps. Like if you've never done that before and stuff like that. I also will share a link to the piece that I wrote for Racket recently, which shares 5 kind of notes or tactics specifically for artists and musicians who want to speak out about Palestine, but who aren't sure how or like aren't sure what to say. So check those out and thank you for listening.